Does a child not have as much right to privacy and freedom from parental conditioning as the parents expect for themselves? It is one of the most fundamental problems facing humanity today. The future depends on how we solve it. It has never been encountered before. For the first time, man has come of age, a certain maturity has happened, and as you become mature, you have to face new problems. Slowly, as man progressed, he became aware of many kinds of slavery. Only recently in the West have we become aware that the greatest slavery is that of the child. It was never thought of before. It is not mentioned in any scripture of the world. Who could have thought a child and a slave to his own parents who love him, who sacrifice themselves for the child? It would have looked ridiculous, utter nonsense, but now, as psychological insight has deepened into the human mind and its functioning, it has become absolutely clear that the child is the most exploited person. Nobody has been exploited more than the child, and of course, he is being exploited behind a facade of love. And I don't say that the parents are aware that they are exploiting the child, that they are imposing a slavery on the child, that they are destroying the child, that they are making him stupid, unintelligent, that their whole effort of conditioning the child as a Hindu, as a Mohammedan, as a Christian, as a Buddhist is inhuman. They are not aware of it, but that does not make any difference as far as the facts are concerned. The child is being conditioned by the parents in ugly ways, and of course, the child is helpless. He depends on the parents. He cannot rebel, he cannot escape, he cannot protect himself. He is absolutely vulnerable, hence, he can be easily exploited. Parental conditioning is the greatest slavery in the world. It has to be completely uprooted. Only then will man be able for the first time to be really free, truly free, authentically free, because the child is the father of the man. If the child is brought up in a wrong way, then the whole of humanity goes wrong. The child is the seed. If the seed itself is poisoned and corrupted by well intentioned people, well wishing people, then there is no hope for a free human individual. Then that dream can never be fulfilled. What you think you have is not individuality, it is only personality. It is something cultivated in you, in your nature, by your parents, the society, the priest, the politicians, the educators. The educator from the kindergarten to the university is the service of the vested interest of the establishment. His whole purpose is to destroy every child in such a way, to cripple every child in such a way that he adjusts to the established society. There is a fear. The fear is that if the child is left unconditioned from the very beginning, he will be so intelligent, he will be so alert, aware that his whole lifestyle will be of a rebellion. And nobody wants a rebels. Everybody wants obedient people. Parents love the obedient child, and remember, the obedient child is almost always the most stupid child. The rebellious child is the intelligent one. But he is not respected or loved. The teachers don't love him. The society does not give him respect. He is condemned. Either he has to compromise with the society or he has to live in a kind of self guilt. Naturally, he feels that he has not been good to his parents, he has not made them happy. Remember perfectly well, the parents of Jesus were not happy with Jesus. The parents of the Buddha were not happy with Gautam the Buddha. These people were so intelligent, so rebellious. How could their parents be happy with them? And each child is born with such great possibilities and potential that if he is allowed and helped to develop his individuality without any hindrance from others, we will have a beautiful world. We will have a tremendous variety of geniuses. The genius happens very rarely, not because the genius is rarely born. No, the genius rarely happens because it is very difficult to escape from the conditioning process of the society. Only once in a while does a child somehow manage to escape from its clutches. Every child is being enveloped by the parents, by the society, by the teachers, by the priest, by all the vested interests, enveloped in many layers of conditioning. He is given a certain religious ideology. It is not his choice, and whenever somebody is forced with no choice of his own, you are crippling the person, you are destroying his intelligence. You are not giving him a chance to choose, you are not allowing him to function intelligently, you are managing it in such a way that he will function only mechanically. He will be a Christian, but he is not Christian by choice. And what does it mean to be a Christian if it is not your choice? The few people who followed Jesus, who went with him, were courageous people. They were the only Christian. They risked their lives. They went against the current. They lived dangerously. They were ready to die, but they were not ready to compromise. The few people who went with Gautam Buddha were really Buddhist. But now there are millions of Christians around the world and millions of Buddhists around the world, and they are all bogus. They are pseudo. They are bound to be pseudo. It is forced on them. They are enveloped in certain religious ideology. Then they are enveloped in a certain political ideology. They are told that they are Indians, that they are Iranians, that they are Chinese, that they are Germans. A certain nationality is imposed on them. Humanity is one, the earth is one, but the politicians would not like it to be one because of the earth is one of the politicians. With all their politics have to disappear. Then where all these presidents and prime minister go? They can exist only if the world remains divided. Religion is one, but then what will happen to the Pope, to all the stupid Sankracharyas, all the Ayatollahs? What will happen to all these people? They can exist only if there are many religions, many churches, many cults, many creeds. There are 300 religions on the earth and at least 3,000 sects of these religions. Then, of course, there is possibility for many priests, bishops, archbishops, high priests, Sankracharyas to exist. This possibility will disappear, and I tell you, religiousness is one. It has nothing to do with any Bible, any Veda, any Gita. It has something to do with a loving heart, with an intelligent being. It has something to do with awareness, meditativeness. But then all the vested interest will suffer. Hence, parents who belong to a certain establishment, a certain nation, a certain church, a certain denomination are bound to force their ideas on their children. And the strange thing is that the children are always more intelligent than the parents because the parents belong to the past and the children belongs to the future. The parents are already conditioned, enveloped, covered. Their mirrors are covered with so much dust that they don't reflect anything. They are blind. Only a blind man can be a Hindu or a Mohammedan or a Jain or a Christian. A man with eyes is simply religious. He does not go to the church, to the temple, or to the mosque. He will not worship all kinds of stupid images, all kind of gods, all kind of superstitions. Parents carry all these. When a child is born, he is clean slate, a tabula rasa. Nothing is written on him. That's his beauty. The mirror is without any dust. He can see more clearly. Mom, Jimmy, did you fall over with your new trousers on? Jimmy, yes, Mom. There wasn't time to take them off. The first grade teacher was talking to her class about nature and she called it the world around you. She asked little Helen in the first row, now, Helen, tell everyone in the class, are you animal, vegetable, or mineral? I am not any of those, she replied promptly. I am a real live girl. A little fellow who was fishing off the end of a pier lost his balance while trying to land a fish and fell in the lakes. Several men who were also fishing nearby rushed to his aid and pulled him out. How did you come to fall in? One of the men asked him. I didn't come to fall in, the kid said. I came to fish. A large family was finally able to move into a more spacious home. Sometime later, an uncle asked his nephew, how do you like your new house? Just fine, replied the lad. My brother and I have our own rooms, and so do my sisters. But poor Mom is still stuck in the same room with Dad. Every child is born intelligent, clear, clean, but we start heaping rubbish on him. He has much more right than the parents because he is beginning his life. The parents are already burdened, they are already crippled, they are already depending on crutches. He has more right to be his own self. He needs privacy, but parents don't allow him any privacy. They are very afraid of the child's privacy. They are continuously poking their noses into the child's affair. They want to have their say about everything. The child needs privacy because all that is beautiful grows in privacy. Remember it. It is one of the most fundamental law of life. The roots grow underground. If you take them out of the ground, they start dying. They need privacy, absolute privacy. The child grows in the mother's womb in darkness, in privacy. If you bring the child into the light among the public, he will die. He needs 9 months of absolute privacy. Everything that needs growth needs privacy. A grown-up person does not need as much privacy because he is already grown up. But a child needs much more privacy, but he is not left alone at all. Parents are very worried. Whenever they see that the child is missing or is alone, they immediately become concerned. They are afraid because of the child is alone, he will start developing his individuality. He always has to be kept within limits so that the parents can go on watching, because their very watching does not allow his individuality to grow. Their watching covers him, envelops him with a personality. Personality is nothing but an envelope. It comes from a beautiful word, persona. Persona means a mask. In Greek dramas, the actors used masks. Sona means sound. Per means through. They used to speak through the mask. You could not see their real faces. You could only hear their voices. Hence, the mask was called a persona because the sound was heard through it. And out of persona comes the word personality. The child has to be continuously on guard because he is being watched. You can see to yourself. If you are taking a bath, you are a totally different person. In your bathroom, you can put aside your mask. Even grown-ups, people who are very serious, start singing, humming. Even grown up people start making faces in the mirror. You are in private. You are perfectly aware that you have locked the door. But if you suddenly become aware that somebody is watching through the keyhole, and an immediate change will happen to you. You will again become serious. The song will disappear. You will not be making faces in the mirror. You will start behaving as you are supposed to behave. This is personality. You are back in the envelope. A child needs immense privacy as much as possible, a maximum of privacy so that he can develop his individuality with no interference. But we are trespassing on the child, continuously trespassing. The parents are continuously asking, what are you doing? What are you thinking? Even thinking. They even want to look into your mind. There are few tribes in the Far East where each child has to tell his dreams every morning to the parents, because even in the dreams he cannot be left alone. He may be dreaming wrong dreams, he may be thinking things he should not think. The parents have to be reported too. The early morning ritual is that first thing before breakfast he has to relate his dreams, what he has seen in the night. Psychologists Psychoanalysis is a very late development in the West, but in the East, in these far eastern tribes, psychoanalysis has been practiced by the parents for thousands of years. And of course, the poor child does not know the symbology, so he simply relates the dream as it is. He does not know what it means, only the parents know. But this is going too far. It is encroaching upon him. It is inhuman. It is overlapping on somebody's space. Just because the child is dependent on your food, for clothes, for shelter, do you think you have the right to do it? Because if the child says that he has seen that he was flying in his dream, the parents immediately know that that is a sexual dream. Now they will curb his behavior more. They will discipline him more. They will give him an early morning cold bath. They'll teach him more about celibacy, and they will teach him that if you are not celibate, things will go wrong. If you think about sexuality, you will lose all intelligence. You will go blind and all kinds of nonsense. A child needs immense privacy. The parent should come only to help him, not to interfere. He should be allowed to do things or not to do things. Parents should only be alert that he does not do any harm to himself or to anybody else. That's enough. More than that is ugly. A tourist drove into a small town and spoke to a boy who was sitting on a bench in front of the post office. How long have you lived here? The tourist asked. About 12 years, the boy replied. It sure is an out of the way place, isn't it? The tourist asked. It sure is, the boy said. There isn't much going on, the tourist said. I don't see anything here to keep you busy. Neither do I, the boy said. That's why I like it. The children like very much to be left alone. Spaciousness is needed for their growth. Yes, parents have to be alert, cautious, so that no harm happens to the child. But this is a negative kind of cautiousness. They are not to interfere positively. They have to give the child a great longing to inquire about truth, but they have not to give him an ideology that gives him the idea of truth. They should not teach him about truth. They should teach him how to inquire about truth. Inquiries should be taught. Investigation should be taught. Adventure should be taught. The children should be helped so that they can ask questions, and the parents should not answer those questions unless they really know. And even if they know, they should say it as Buddha used to say it to his disciples. Don't believe in what I say. This is my experience. But the moment I say it to you, it becomes false because for you it is not an experience. Listen to me, but don't believe. Experiment, inquire, search. Unless you yourself know, your knowledge is of no use. It is dangerous. A knowledge which is borrowed is a hindrance. But that's what parents go on doing. They go on conditioning the child. No conditioning is needed for the children. No direction has to be given to them. They have to be helped to be themselves. They have to be supported, nourished, strengthened. A real father, a real mother, real parents will be a blessing to the child. The child will feel helped by them so that he becomes more rooted in his nature, more grounded, more centered, so that he starts loving himself rather than feeling guilty about himself, so that he respects himself. Remember, unless a person love himself, he cannot love anybody else in the world. Unless a child respect himself, he cannot respect anybody else. That's why all your love is bogus and all your respect is pseudo, phony. You don't respect yourself. How can you respect anybody else? Unless your love for yourself is born within your being, it will not radiate to others. First you have to become a light unto yourself, then your light will spread, will reach others. It was examination day at school, and a bad tempered teacher was questioning a small boy about his knowledge of plants and flowers. The boy was unable to answer any question correctly. In frustration, the teacher turned to his assistant and shouted, "Go and bring me a handful of hay." As the assistant turned to go out, the small boy cried, "And for me, just a small coffee, please." A man was driving along a country road when his car broke down. While he was fixing it, a small boy approached and asked, "What is that?" "It's Jack," said the man. "My father has two of those," said the boy. Then a minute later he asked again, "And what is that?" "That's flashlight." "Oh, my father has two of those too." "And over there is is that a spanner?" "Yes," said the man irritably. "My father has two of those." The conversation went on this vein for some time. Finally, the repair was finished, and the man got up and went to piss at the side of the road. As he was pissing, he pointed to his reproductive machinery and asked, "Does your father have two of those too?" "Of course not," said the boy, "but he has one that is twice as long." Children are immensely intelligent. They just need a chance. They need opportunities to grow. The right climate. Every child is born with potential of enlightenment, with the potential of becoming awakened, but we destroy it. This has been greatest calamity in the whole history of man. No other slavery has been as bad as the slavery of the child. And no other slavery has taken as much juice out of humanity as the slavery of the child. And this is also going to be the most difficult task for humanity to get rid of it. Unless we arrange the whole of society in totally different way, unless a radical change happens and the family disappears and give places to commune, it will not be possible. Once this old pattern of family disappears into a more multidimensional setup, humanity can have a new birth, a new man is needed, and then the new man will bring the very paradise that in the past we were hoping for in some other life. Paradise can be here now, but we have to bring about a new child. Why do people voluntarily repress themselves and adopt crippling defense mechanism? For survival, the child is so fragile he cannot exist on his own. You can exploit this. You can force the child to learn anything you want him to. That's what a behaviorist like B.F. Skinner goes on doing in his lab. He teaches pigeons to play ping pong, but the trick is the same: reward and punishment. If they play, they are rewarded. If they don't, if they are reluctant, they are punished. If they make a right move, they are rewarded, given food. If they make a wrong move, they are given an electric shock. Even pigeons start learning ping pong. That's what has always been done in the circus. You can go and see. Even lions, beautiful lions, are caged, and elephants are moving according to the whip of the ringmaster. They have been starved, and then they are rewarded, punished, and rewarded. This is the whole trick. What do you do in the circus with the animals? You go on doing with your children, but you do it very unconsciously because it has been done to you. This is the only way you know how to train and bring up children. This is what you call bringing up. In fact, it is bringing down. It is forcing them into a lower existence rather than bringing them up to a higher existence. These are all Skinnerian tricks and techniques. Because of them, we voluntarily start repressing ourselves and adopt crippling defense mechanisms. A child does not know what is right and what is wrong. We teach him. We teach him according to our mind. The same thing may be right in Tibet and wrong in India. The same thing may be right in our house and wrong in our neighbor's house. But you force it onto the child. This is right, you have to do it. The child gets approval when he does it and gets disapproval when he does not do it. When he follows you, you are happy, and when you pat the child when he does not follow you, you are angry and you torture the child. You beat the child, you starve the child, you don't give your love to him. Naturally, the child starts understanding that his survival is at stake. If he listens to his mother and this father, all is okay. If not, they'll kill him. And what can the child do? How can he assert himself against these powerful people? They loom large, they are huge and powerful, and they can do anything. By the time the child becomes powerful, he is already conditioned. Then the conditioning has gone so deep in him that now there's no need for the father and mother to follow him. The inner conditioning, what they call the conscious, will go on torturing him. For example, if the child starts playing with his genitals, which is a joy to children, a natural joy because the child's body is very sensitive, it is not sexual at all in the science that you understand sexuality. The child is really very, very alive, and naturally, when the child is alive, his genitals are more alive than other parts of the body. That is where life energy accumulates. It is the most sensitive part. Touching and playing with the genitals, the child feels tremendously happy. But you are afraid. It is your problem. You start being afraid that he is masturbating or something. It is nothing, it is sheer joy at playing with one's body. It is not masturbation or anything. It is loving one's body. It is your guilt, your fear. Somebody may see that your son is doing this, and what will they think of how you are bringing up your children? Make them civilized. Teach them not to do that. So you stop it. You shout at the child. You say stop again and again, and it goes deeper, 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 and becomes a consciousness, an unconscious part of the child. Now there's no need for you. When he starts playing with his genitals, something from the inside will say stop, and he will become afraid. Maybe the father is looking or the mother is looking, and he will feel guilty. And then we teach him that there is God, the Father, who is always looking everywhere. Even in the bathroom, he goes on watching you everywhere. This concept of God is crippling. Then you are not free even in your bathroom. Now where are you free? That omnipotent God follows you like a detective. wherever you are. When you are making love to a woman, he is standing there. He won't allow you. He is a super policeman. In addition to the conscience that the parents have created, that's why Buddha says that unless you kill your parents, you will never become free. Killing the parents means killing the voice of the parent inside you, killing the conscience inside you, dropping these nonsense ideas and starting to live your own life according to your own consciousness. Remember, consciousness has to be more and conscious has to be less. By and by, conscious has to disappear completely, and pure consciousness has to be lived. Consciousness is the law, let consciousness be the only law. Then, whatsoever you feel, it is your life, you have to decide. It is nobody else's life, nobody else has any right to decide. I am not saying that you will always be doing right, sometimes you will do wrong, but that too is a part of your freedom and part of your growth. Many times you will go astray, but that is perfectly all right. Going astray is way of coming back home. A person who never goes astray never comes back home. He is already dead. A person who never does anything wrong never enjoys doing anything right. He is just a slave. A mental slavery is created. A human child is dependent on his parents for a long time, at least 21 to 25 years. It is a long time, almost one third of his whole life. For a third of his life, he is being conditioned. Just think, 25 years of conditioning, anything can be forced on a person. And once you learn these tricks, it is very difficult to forget them. That's why it is so difficult to take a jump into reality and start living your life. Of course, in the beginning, it will be very shaky. You'll tremble many times because naturally you'll be going against your parents, you'll be going against the society. Society is your parents. Writ large, your parents were nothing but agents of this society. It is all a conspiracy. The parents, the teachers, the policeman, the magistrate, the president. It is all a conspiracy. They are all together and they are all holding the future of all the children. Once you have learned, unlearning becomes very difficult because after 25 years of constant repetition, you are completely hypnotized. A de-hypnosis is needed. You have to drop all this conditioning. Yes, it is simply survival, the need to survive. The child wants to live. That's why he starts compromising. He bargains. Anybody will bargain when there is a question of life and death. If you are dying in a desert and somebody has water and you are thirsty and you are dying, he can ask any price. He can manage anything. He can force anything upon you. That's what we have done up to now with children. You ask, why do people voluntarily repress themselves and adopt crippling defense mechanism? It is not voluntarily. It looks as if the voluntary because by the time you become alert, it is almost inside your blood and bones, but it is not voluntary. No child ever learns anything voluntarily. It is forced, it is violent. You can watch any child. Every child resists, every child fights to the very end. Every child creates trouble for the parents. Every child tries hard this way and that to escape from this crippling mechanism. But finally, the parents get hold of him because they are more powerful. It is simply a question of the powerful and the powerless. So, it is not unnatural that when children start to grow up, they start taking revenge on the parents. The reaction is natural. It is very difficult to forgive your parents. That's why all societies teach you to respect them. If you cannot forgive them, at least respect them. If you cannot love them, at least respect them. But that respect is formal, bogus. Deep down, you remain angry. If what I am saying is heard, if what I am saying becomes prevalent in the world, someday the children will really love their parents. The children will be really in tune with their parents because the parents will not enemies to them, they will be friends.